and the pharmacy was located right in the basement of that building. And so the pharmacist came out and was shocked to learn we didn't do washing powder but gunpowder instead. But so I was hooked. It was too late. I mean, I realized now, by that time I understood, okay, chemistry does not provide all the big answers like why are we here, what's the structure and fate of the universe, what's the nature of reality, all these things that I was so interested in then. But I could make fun stuff. And this has continued until today, that I love the ability of chemistry to create. Like, we're not only understanding, okay, maybe not to that level that I wanted to, not only understand our world, the nature of reality, what is matter, but we're also creating it. That's the fun part. My mom is an artist, my dad is an artist, and my older brother is also an artist. So I come kind of from a family of artists, even though my auntie, the sister of my mom, is also a Nobel Prize winner in medicine. But it was more like an artistic family. And in chemistry, I can live that, these two sides, like the understanding side and the creative side. So this is how I came into this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to say something.
All right, so and my pivotal moment came when I decided to quit the science. So I studied physics in Russia back at the very difficult times, lots of turmoil, probably similar times to Timor a couple of years ago. So everyone thought that you can use the opportunity to earn easy money. So everyone started to open businesses, and same with me. So we were second year in the university, third year in the university. So we thought, okay, that's a good time. Maybe physics is not what our career should be focused on. Maybe business is the opportunity. So I practically quitted the study, quitted the science. We created companies, mainly in construction, and I mean, any company in construction is a bit of a dodgy business, and at that time in Russia it was basically next to criminal activity, and we were doing actually quite well, and all my friends who stay in the business, they are very, very wealthy individuals now. But then after a couple of years, 3 years, I just realized that I'm extremely bored, that this is, okay, you earn money, but what's the point? So, and I really made a conscious decision that I need to go back to science. So that really is something which gives me a kick, gives me a drive. And that was probably the best lesson which I learned, and I'm so lucky that I learned it very early in my career, because there are always lots of temptations on your career path, and you always think whether you should continue in your PhD, you should continue into your postdoc, and it's always very difficult decisions. It's family comes and so on. And I mean, scientists then are not the wealthiest people as well, and you need to move from one city, from one country to another all the time. But the fact that I tried it, I tried other careers, and despite certain advantages, maybe monetary, financial advantages, I still don't really like it, and I still enjoy my science. Really kept me on the track, and it really helped enormously. I mean, I don't have a standard scientific career. I started my first PhD back in Russia. I didn't finish. I started my second in Holland. I didn't finish. I didn't even bother to start the third one, so I knew it's going to fail, so I went straight into postdoc. But at least with all those things, the experience that you tried other things, and you know that physics or science in general gives you this kick into your nerves and into your brain, without which you cannot survive. That really is the best feeling and is the experience which you learn once and you cherish for the rest of your life.
Sorry, we have to test. Test. Can you hear me? Test. Okay. Thank you. Just to summarize in Ketum, so our students, o who's pergunta nessa o insacer começa a ser na carreira e a cientista na e a razão o balune tamba ser e problema buka razão buka resposta ba pergunta ira balune tamba gosta duni buka nessa professor itan professor Benjamin ini Nindia be razão to ser coco halo be laboratorium e uma depois laboratorium ne ahihan terbakar depois íamos ia falhanço da la ruma ia então ida ne mak sernya história bara Konaba sernya Kereira, so it's quite a fascinating story. It's not always like smooth journey. So with that, I want open for the discussion. Colega rumah, estudante rumah agora começa lo que ba pergunta. Lele ba além estudante sira na be ia buat rumah na be karakusu. The floor is yours. There is no such thing as stupid questions in the discussion like this. So the floor is yours. I'm open for maybe 3 questions, and then we can see if how far we can go. Colega Sira, ia pergunta kalai. From this, okay, I can see one hands up. Please come, yeah. Bel husu ya tetum depois awajur traduz.
Okay, thank you so much. First time, my name is Gradiana Esperanza Sarmento. I'm from UCT University. Here I have 2 questions, and the first one is, how encourage students to choose science careers? And the second one, what skills are very important for success in a science career?
Can you repeat please the second one?
Okay. What skills are very important for success about science career? Thank you.
I think maybe you go straight with the Professor Benjamin. Can you go?
For me?
Yeah.
Or would you mind repeating the question? I'm sorry.
I can probably start. So the first question was how to attract students to do a career in science, but it's actually related to the second question: what are the skills that are the most essential for a scientist? And I would say that the two are very much related, because the most essential skill is or at least from my opinion, is the curiosity. So there is absolutely no chance that you would go to science because you like the discovery or you like the prizes or you like something else. So there's the curiosity, how to make gunpowder. I should say that it just shows that why I chose physics, because my gunpowder never properly exploded. So just I'm a lousy chemist. But I was trying to do the same, of course, in my house and back in my childhood, and so if something is the process of exploration gives you the kick, it gives you this extra adrenaline, then science is your choice, and there is absolutely no chance that you would survive simply because you love prizes or you love the discoveries. Discoveries do happen, but not as often as you would like them to be. So the only way to survive is to love your everyday job, and that's basically coming to your first question of what are how do we attract people, and it's actually getting, from one side it's getting tougher for the young students, because the competition now in science is actually increasing, but at the same time there are many more opportunities, because we see the investments and we see that science now, really good science, is made not only in the universities or in the research centers, in the institutions, but also in the companies, and we see huge investments from startups to the large companies into science. So the scientific career is now not limited by the universities. So there are so many opportunities, really exciting opportunities, which didn't exist in our time. And I think that that's a good opportunity for any student to go for science. It's tough, but it's tough for everyone, and it's you really get a lot of chances for either a discovery or a new startup, a new algorithm. So just there are lots of chances now to succeed.
If I can only add to this, but I would probably give a very similar answer. It's like if somebody tells you it's a good idea to go into science or to study this because you get a nice job later, it's not the right reason, right? Because it has to be ultimately fueled by your own enthusiasm. That's really absolutely essential, and so it's coming, I would say, from a place of love, because ultimately, in order to really do science well, you have to love what you're doing. And this appearance from the outside, they work super hard, is just that. It's an appearance. For us, for me, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like what I want to do anyway. I'm curious, I want to understand, and I want to create, and it's sort of the love of my life. And it's, I think, very, very important to have that. So don't listen to anybody, to your teachers, to your parents, or to a Nobel Prize winner. Follow your own drive, your own interest, and your own curiosity. It's much more important.
What we have been discussing and answering is careers in scientific research, creating new science. And for that, it's actually true. I mean, I don't think it's a skill. I think it's a nature, it's a virtue. It's inside you. You have to love, you have to be creative, you have to be curious. Curiosity is the most important thing, but also patience and diligence. Because out of 100 days, 99 of these days, you will be depressed because your experiments, your algorithms, your models do not work. But the 100th day when something will work, then the happiness that you feel doesn't compare to anything else. So you have to be patient, and that's another different, and this creativity, how do you inspire creativity, or even to applied science? I mean, you mentioned about wondering about the stars. The stars played a lot of role in my mind, although I was always an engineer, but I always look at the stars, and my parents played a good way, trying to understand, I mean, what could it be there, and how it was formed, and the distance, and so on. So stars and other experiments with, well, not gunpowder, but with other powders, or physical things, you know, having the pendulum and the two balls hit, and then the other two balls on the other end. This is miracle. So this is physics. So by having to the young, answering the first and second question together, by bringing, by showing to the young people the beautiful or the peculiar, the curious things that happen in physics or chemistry, or for me, with few lines of code, you create something that is artificial, but still it's working. You see, it's moving. It is amazing. But you can be a scientist without being a researcher. Just finishing your undergraduate degree and going to industry and doing scientific work is very important. I think for Timor-Leste, at the stage where it is now, this may be even more important. By going around the SciTech Expo 2 days ago, I spoke to people from the petroleum department, or I don't remember what the name of it, and they were showing with pride how they used PipeSim, which is a simulator for pipes, to understand and measure based on a whole bunch of parameters how a pipe should be constructed from the offshore drilling to the inner one. And you need to be a scientist to do this, even though you won't be discovering new knowledge. With the same experiments, with the same, you still need the curiosity, you still need the discipline to go through this. So that's the path. That's the path.
Thank you, professors. I think this is not only applied for science, but also for all other careers. Just atu hatete pergunta oine Konaba oinsa atu at encoraja estudantes here para investir para belebe por sua carreira investir a carreira ida nene hawanai hoje explicação oine nene e questão tudo mais importante ida magne ida tem que have curiosidade né buka atu hatene buat phone né segundo mak ida tem que have domingo paixão ba ita ne serviço buat nebe ita halo sir professor sir na halo ne la ostamba osa ne importante bet mas bet tam sir gosta halo e descobre buat phone ida nama importante e tem que paixão ba ita ne buat nebe ita lo na não é hawa tem kata la os ne la os ba serviço e mundo ciência de mas bet serviço todo e já tam pergunta rumah awan ida ne colega tu suka colega feto na ya bela husu ya tetu mas sedia aku ya inglês salamos pois mak kita ajuda malu ya bela hatete nana ami larona na ali bela equipa técnica bela ajuda ela.
So good afternoon. My name is Angelica da Costa Siqueira, and I study in IBC Dialogu, and I'm 14 years old. So my question is about how long does it take for a scientist to finish one experiment? I want to know it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sim.
Okay. The next question. Well, either day,
Dear. So I am, thank you very much. So it is an honor to me to be here. So I'm Adriano Ventura Elo, as a final year student from Faculty of Exact Science Natural at Universidade Nacional Timor-Leste. So my course focus on maths, physics, and chemistry. At the same time, my specialization focus on maths in statistics and data analysis. So my question is, how do I integrate my specialization into the chemistry and physics as well? So it is my question. So my second question about during my course, enroll my course in my faculty. So the teacher said me like the most difficult science in history in lifetime is physics. So may you tell us some secret about the physics itself and some advice to encourage for young people around that Timor-Leste to create for a study for the science. So it is my question. Thank you very much.
I will go directly to the professor, to the panelists.
Okay, so I think we can bring those two questions together. So how long does it take to do one experiment, and whether physics or chemistry or computer science are the most difficult ones? And it really depends. And some of the most beautiful experiments could be very simple. That's really, and that's how science works. So you basically find a small feature which shouldn't be there, which really violates all your previous understanding of the system, and then you try to amplify and you bring it to the absolute simplicity. And most of the beautiful experiments really take can be quite short, but of course in the lab it can be anything. So one of our experiments which we did with graphene, so these days it takes 1 minute to do it. So if we knew the recipe, it takes you 1 minute to make graphene, and then you get the Nobel Prize. Unfortunately, it took us like more than a year to in the first place to realize this. And experiments typically between the idea and the actual publication can take months, sometimes years. So it really depends. But there is quite often this beautiful moment of understanding, and so that's what you are looking for. That's what gives you the most enjoyment, and that's the answer to the second question from the gentleman, that whether it should be difficult or one branch of science is more difficult than another. I don't think so. I think, and especially, we are really living in the very interesting time when the speed of science is increasing, fortunately or unfortunately. I don't know whether it is good or not, but it's absolutely impossible to predict where the next breakthrough is going to happen. It can happen in AI, in data science. It can happen in biology. So who knows? It's and in that respect, I think it's actually wrong to look at science which branches so much. It's the unfortunate that it's becoming more specialized. But those people who look at the whole science as in its unity, those are going to win, and those are going to understand and create the most beautiful and the simplest experiments.
Professor Yanis?
Exactly what Konstantin said, with one little thing that I'll come to the end. So I absolutely agree with you. Experiments can take a little bit or years, and there are tremendous challenges in all sciences. One thing I want to add is that often the discovery is not the goal of the experiment you are doing. Accidentally, you see something that was not your goal, you're trying something else, it catches your attention, and that the outlier, that serendipitous thing, is then that you go and study and do other experiments that happen. So serendipity is part of the nature of discovery, and you have to be open to look into whatever you sense the gold, even if it's not in the direction that you're looking for. And I think graphene, from what I've read, to some extent, you were not looking for graphene. It was something else, and some phenomenon popped up. Penicillin is like this, and so on. The one thing I wanted to possibly differ a little bit from what you said, you're absolutely right. It's unfortunate that science is becoming more and more specialized and you have to become a physicist of this, of that, of the other, or a computer science in data optimization and so on. But on the other hand, we see recently also some openings from one science going into the other. And characteristic end results are that 2 years ago, computing people got the Nobel Prize in Physics, and computational people, for computational stuff, people got the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, and this year, a physicist got the Turing Award. So you see some openings that, yes, we have to be specialized, but for the grand scheme of things, bigger teams have to come together to address the bigger challenges, and they have to be interdisciplinary. So you need the specialization, but maybe bigger teams to do big science. So generalization of the specializations.
Benjamin?
Yeah, concerning the time of an experiment, how long does it take? I also have an interesting story to tell you. Well, first of all, I'm in the Max Planck Society, which is really special because the way it operates is you get the funding guaranteed for decades, right? It's very unique, and we don't have that anywhere else in the world. And that enables you really to do long-term experiments. We have a program that I initiated in 2007, so this is almost 20 years old now, and now is coming to fruition. We get super exciting results, often, you know, on an idea that I developed literally 20 years ago. So sometimes science can be very slow, but it can also be incredibly fast, and then it can be actually that you are the rate determining step for a scientific discovery to take place, for an experiment to be done, because you were worried about it. And this was for me the case in the early days of my career. I just became an assistant professor in 1999, and I was planning an experiment to try a new type of catalysts that people have thought was kind of impossible, or at least did not really consider to be a good idea. And before doing the experiment, even though the experiment itself was actually easy to do, I had weeks of sleepless nights. Is that a good idea to bet my career on something that nobody else is doing? And one morning I got up and I found the courage to do the experiment, and already on that same day I knew it will work. It works actually. Not like to 100%, and not that this would bring me ultimately to Stockholm, but it was clear, you know, this whole idea actually is valid, and that was super rewarding. So yeah, nowadays what I learned from that is when I am the slow step and when I'm nervous about whether or not my idea is crazy or not, I'm at the good place. I should be at that place. This is my job, basically. I have to be at a place of uncertainty. If I would be so certain this experiment is going to work, you know, then it's probably boring. Usually it's boring. Yeah? So I try now, like, to find this in my day-to-day work. Of course, coming from a slightly different angle now. I have tenure now. I have a safe job, and I have guaranteed funding for the next decade. So I'm not worried anymore about my life and my career. But still, I want to be at the place of uncertainty and doubts. That's my homeland.
Thank you. Professor Panan, buat importante la ia tempo que la ia tempo não é determinado para Konaba atual experimento, né? E daí depende, balu de experimento balu la lais balu mas han tempo claro, mas be awanin assunto importante é cientista seria bem descobrimento né os ultimate goal, os finalidades do seu serviço, basira no mínimo. Awanin importante era mas o professor Benjamin yang hati kata dalam rumah ni ia ideia ne be hanas itnya kal bola ko tuan ka ia incerteza ne cria curiosidade basira atu buka hetan awanin ida ne habel husutan emai itu se tempo emai ida tandai so sepate ne ohin ia kalai awanin yo sepate ne desculpa ohin ia ida ne de sebel pergunta ida ya colega ne Oh,
The kids from the other side are all here.
Yes.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you move by grade, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, Sebellalai, yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shipriana. I'm from UCT, University Catholic Communities. My question is to Arfitso Konstantin Novosov. My question is, how did you manage to choose graphene research that ultimately won the Nobel Prize in Physics? And what challenge did you face during the graphene research? Thank you. This is my question.
Well, that's that's a good. The answer already been given that the serendipity plays a very important role in our research. The only problem is that you cannot rely on the serendipity alone. You have to work hard on something. So we've been working on graphite, and we're trying to search for quantum effects in thin graphitic films. And at that time, we didn't know about anything about graphene. We only knew one thing, that graphene shouldn't exist. So that's a full stop. But when you are excited about something, and so we were seeing some interesting quantum effects there. So it kept us going, kept us making further and further experiment. And then one day we got into some very puzzling experiment, and the only way to explain them that you actually get exactly a monolayer of graphene, because it's of course you cannot measure it. So it is serendipitous by up to some extent. The only problem is that you cannot. If you sit there doing nothing, it's not going to happen to you whether serendipity or not. So you really have to work hard on some challenging problems, and then you have a chance to discover something.
Thank you. Can I have just two more? Sorry, I know all of us want to, but two more questions. Yes, can you just one question, please? Pergunta dari Alin. Alin, belu husu mas pergunta dari.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. And my name is Avelino Cruz, and I study at Colégio de São José Operário. So my question is preferred to Mr. Konstantin. Motivation, what motivates you when Mr. left science to work in a company and returned to science today can become a scientist? Because in Timor-Leste, many young people will stop their science to find a job because they come with the ideas that not school also get a job and a school also get a job. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope my colleagues are going to help here as well. But okay, so for me, it was important to try different professions and just explore different opportunities. And business, I have absolutely nothing against business, and lots of my friends are very good businessmen, and they create some innovative solution in business. But it just happens to be that it's not my piece of cake. It's something to do with how your brain is wired. So some people are better in engineering, some people are better in science, some people are better in business, and you cannot do anything without it. It's the wiring of your brain, and you cannot say that one activity is better than another, but you need to learn this. You cannot rely on your parents to tell you, on your professors to tell you. You really have to realize what excites you the most, and I was lucky to try it, and realizing this. Lots of people live with the profession chosen by someone else for them, and not realizing that they're not happy.
Before other professors may jump in, can we take at least two more questions, and then we will ramp up this session. So we go to them, so they might ask the same question, and then we take all the questions, and then we answer once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for this, just to help, I absolutely agree with what you said. I just want to push more. I've tried many things that I said. I think I can do a whole bunch of kinds of things, but the best thing is for me science. But you mentioned you can innovate in business. The word innovation exists everywhere. There is scientific innovation, there is technological innovation, social innovation, cultural innovation. You can innovate anywhere. The thing is what attracts you. So I absolutely agree with you.
You want to add anything to that to discuss?
Nope, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Please, the next question. Ito 40 pergunta tolo, depois we take 3 questions from them, and then we answer once. Yeah, Bella.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arminida Costa, a student of Catholic University of Timor-Leste. And my question is, what is the key to turning a simple idea into a Nobel Prize winning discovery? And thank you so much.
Can you repeat?
Or you repeat if you understood.
What's the, how to turn a single idea?
My question is, what is the key to turning a simple idea into a Nobel Prize winning discovery? Thank you.
We take another question? Yes?
All questions together.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adelino. I'm a student from Colégio São José Operário. As someone who dreams of becoming a scientist, I'm worried about my future. If AI can analyze data, generate hypotheses, and make discoveries, what will differentiate human scientists from AI? And how should the younger generation prepare for the future? Thank you.
That's a very good question. The next, can we say this is the last, and then we will see, yeah.
Well, my name is Darfon Jesus Mendes Pereira. I'm student from Colégio São José Operário. And my question, how do I know my career in science? Because I'm confused what to become. My father's wanted me to become a doctor, but I have my own desire. I have a dream from childhood to become a pilot. But in school, my physics and mathematics is not good, so I confused about what to become.
So it's more of a challenge that they face in the school. Yeah. Can we go to answer? Hey, hold on up. Yeah, can we go to answer? Yeah.
Maybe to the one idea that turns into a Nobel Prize. I mean, probably many of us had that experience, but I can assure you one idea is usually not enough. So it's good to have one really revolutionary, crazy idea that has that potential, but it's definitely much better if you have more than one. When you start a career in science and you want to really achieve that, you have a whole bunch of crazy ideas that would ultimately bring you to Stockholm. So then my recommendation is really investigate clearly if you cannot provide a few more questions than that one.
Yeah, those were 3 very challenging questions. Let me ask the simplest one, and then I'll leave my colleagues to answer the most difficult one. So the first question, how to turn your idea into the Nobel Prize winning discovery. The best advice I ever got in my life was from Klaus von Klissen, who got his Nobel Prize in '85, I think, for the quantum Hall effect. He said, Costa, if you ever think about winning a Nobel Prize, you will never get one. So basically, if you think that if you work in science for the sake of discovery or for the sake of prize, it's not going to happen. And I mean, I know it sounds trivial, but this is very much true. So just it's really important, and that's partly to the most challenging third question. So, but for the second one, whether AI is going to replace scientists, everyone is thinking about this. I've been working in AI for science for the last, 5-6 years, and it's my expectations even changed sign. It's not only by the magnitude, but by the direction as well. I hope not. I hope that the discovery is the human prerogative, because it's a phase transition always. It's the discovery. It's always the creation of a new language, and those events are rare. So probably we don't have enough data to teach the AI for that. But I don't have any strong data on that. So I don't have anything to confirm my expectation. Maybe I'm wrong. And guys, I'll leave you for the last question to answer. I'm not going to make a decision on the student life here.
You seem to have understood the third question. Can you repeat it?
Right. So the third question is that the young gentleman loves science. His parents are thinking about some alternative career for him.
Yes.
His teachers are not encouraging. So how do we encourage, and how do we provide the encouragement for science?
Okay, the first question, I don't have a Nobel Prize, but I work for the love of the work, for the love of the science. I will never get a Nobel Prize because I'm in computing. Turing Award, I'm not thinking about it. The prizes and any other award that exists are a result. They are not a goal. It can happen. It's a side effect. Will AI replace scientists? No. It will be, currently it's a research assistant. It helps you advance your productivity, explore many more options, and so on. I believe they will reach at a point of level, and already we've seen it in special cases, where even a scientific hypothesis is formulated. The methodology is chosen, the experiments are set up, so a whole bunch of things are happening, but again, we are not there yet for an AI scientist. I believe that at some point, at least in certain areas, we will get there, but the creativity, as Costa said, is a prerogative of the human. I don't know if we'll call creativity what will be happening with the AI, but I believe very useful scientific results will be coming from AI in the future. I don't want to put the size. But the creativity that will be completely off the track and off the beaten path, the tremendous serendipity, okay, it will not come from AI. So we'll have AI researchers and human researchers working in a lab together, interacting, but we will never be replaced. And it's not because of this. For the last one, follow your dreams. Follow your dreams.
I maybe add to the AI question that always comes, and it always comes from kids, which is somehow surprising. I mean, you're a young boy, or young man. Why don't you first try to develop your own human intelligence, right? Read and learn and develop curiosity and drive for science before you worry about if AI is going to replace you. There are other jobs that definitely will be replaced first. I would more worry, for example, about lawyers and certain business people, computer programmers and doctors and so on. I think there is always space for human creativity and original questions that somehow the AI doesn't come up with. At least I hope so. But having said this, I also worry a little bit like everybody else. And so I have a team in Japan actually, and they are building an autonomous laboratory which perceives the ideas, conducts the experiments, and analyzes the data, all in sort of one AI-based robot cycle, just in case, because I don't want to miss out.
Thank you. Awan importante at pergunta ito ini. Unsa transforma ideia bat manan Nobel ne, dan objetivo ne ke finalidade ne mak atu buka Nobel ne dalam rumah tu ikut itala lahetantan. Ida ne. Segundo ida Konaba AI ne, awan statement itu important lah lima orang ni. Antes kita preocupa by AI, kita tinggi hanoi dulu ko start to develop human intelligence, develop human intelligence first. Itu ni lihat kita kere kle sirane, kita develop itu ni an. Hanoi ni dah nama important. Maybe the last session for this. Please, bele pergunta.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Geneva. I'm studying at Externato São José. So my question is, what science career do you think will be most needed in the world 10 years from now, but no one is talking about yet? And how can young people in our region do science that helps the world without having to leave home? That's all my question. Thank you.
Okay, so I love to end with one dream reaction of mine that I would think could change the world, and that is an artificial photosynthesis in which a catalyst converts the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere back into oxygen gas on the one hand and carbon on the other hand, maybe graphite or coal or something like that. That would be a reaction that if it would work on scale, it could really save us. It potentially could stop climate change, and it would create a huge amount of kind of free electricity, because we know how to convert coal into electricity. And we could also transform the chemical industry into a sustainable, completely sustainable solar, coal-based chemical industry. And last but not least, the climate change we could stop by just digging the extra coal that we generate from the atmosphere back into where it came from. So that would be something for the next generation to work on, I would propose.
Professor Yanis?
I would say something, climate change and addressing the climate issue would be also from the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 13, I think, is the most important one to address. But bringing in my technology, I think digital twins, actual digital twins for climate, for health, for machines, having the digital twin and being able to accurately see various scenarios of addressing these things would be something that will touch all sciences, but also everything about our environment and activity of life. So, digital twins.
Yeah, I think complexity will be one of the buzzing words in the next 10 years. Starting with complex materials, complex quantum systems, complex reactions, but eventually going towards the biological systems, the way our brain operates. So it's probably longer than 10 years, but we need to start thinking about it now.
Thank you. I hope this is the last question. How many?
They keep growing. More and more coming.
No. Can we have? I know what. Can we have just 2 more? Because we are running out of the time.
Okay.
So 2 more questions, and then we ramp up.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Kenny Marquez. I am currently attending QSI International School of Dili, and I'm 15 years old. It is a great honor to be here today, and I have one question for you. In your years of discovery, science, and experiments, was there a moment where you felt like you were at a dead end? If so, do you have any advice for the youth around the world in order to succeed in science?
Okay,
thank you.
Then another one, can we have the last one? Sorry. The last one, yes?
Good afternoon, my name is Alexa. I'm a 10th grade student at Escola Portuguesa de Dili, and I would like to ask the following questions. So based on your perspective, what are the areas in science that need to be focused on more these days? Thank you.
Yeah, what are the? Can we take? Are you fine? Okay. Yes? 2 more, play, okay.
Okay, thank you all. Good afternoon. It's an honor to be standing here and asking a question from you all. My name is Bayumburt, and I'm a student in QSI Dili International School. And my question is, in your career of making breakthroughs, what did you learn from your biggest failure, and what advice would you give for the youth who are afraid to make mistakes in science? Thank you.
The last one?
No.
Hello, sir. It's an honor to meet you all. I just want to say that science today is usually done by huge teams, but prizes like the Nobel Prize are given to only a few people. So do you think the way we recognize scientists need to change? And secondly, does the prize change the way your career was?
I've got, there is a very nice story by Leo Szilard. Leo Szilard was the engineer behind the Manhattan Project. He got a very nice story about prizes. So I recommend everyone to read this. But yes, you're right. So I think the way how do we recognize scientists, especially young scientists, because they really got a very tough time now, is it needs to change, so we need to give them support during the early days.
Let me say that there have been many times of disappointment and feeling of failure. And for that, you need patience, you need persistence. If your instinct tells you something, follow it. And even if you're not finding something where you're going, go there. Many occasions like this. The most important research that I have done based on what people say and the impact was not what I was looking for. It happened after many failures in a different way. And one of the questions that asked about, I think, others and so on, science is not a solitary work. Yes, if you're doing mathematics, maybe one person can do it, but be in a team, form a team if you're becoming more senior, have many people around you that are different from you. And in a team, first of all, you become more resilient and one gives courage to the other when something is not going right. But interdisciplinarity is a key thing to make progress and also to have different ideas coming there.
Yeah, the question was, what does it take to have a successful career in science? I think there's many things that are required, but by far the most important ingredient, in my opinion, I've mentioned it before, is enthusiasm. Why? Because if you manage to make what you truly love your work, you live a happy life. If you pursue what you love to do anyway, that's the definition of happiness. And now people will pay you for that, right? They will give you a lab, they will give you funding, they will give you a nice career while you are pursuing what you want to pursue anyway. So that's my strongest recommendation, and I would even generalize this beyond science to any area. If your favorite thing is playing football or if it's cutting hair, then become a hairstylist. Why not? I mean, you will be a happy person. So I think there's no problem with this. But the big ticket, in my opinion, is really to have that enthusiasm for science, because science in itself is so enjoyable because we learn new things that nobody has seen before, right? That is the joy of science, discovering some new phenomenon that nobody has seen before, and in an ideal way, even being able to manipulate it such that we create a new world. This combination is just sort of unbeatable, in my opinion. Thank you.
With that, I just want to, these are very important related to the questions. Antes, iranabe itahatene iranabe sucesso serheta novel, mas antes ne sir ia falhanço lubuk ira. Nabe ita lahaten, no ine importante la lema ita atu. Compreende e la osias mundo ciência de me be nyamor, mas be ba sabe magne. Ba ita sabe magne. Paixão ba arena be ser serviço, senha persistência atu continua coco. No mos entusiasmo no mos curiosidade ba atu coco na fatim buat ne be sera halo. With that, let us give a round of applause to distinguished panelists here, Nobel laureates. His Excellencies, Mr. President of the Republic, Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, Mr. José Ramos Horta, is here. Distinguished panelists, guests, ladies and gentlemen. I think it is not the point of this conversation to answer all of your questions, and to give that the country is facing. But the point of this conversation is to promote and inspire Timorese students here to start investing in their career in science. As the Prime Minister stated yesterday in the news, Timor-Leste does not want only to be the consumer of the knowledge and innovation around the world, but hopefully by the next 1 or 2 decades, the world will be benefited from some of the young scientists or discovery made by Timor-Leste. But this, it will require the right ecosystem and government policy. It is our dream that in the next 2 years, some of Timorese young people would make their name in the global stage as the panelists and many others who have traveled long way to Timor-Leste and joined us during this tremendous 2 days. With that, I thank you for the distinguished panelists here who have made my work easier by keeping on time. And also let's give a round of applause to our audience who stayed here and the students and who have asked the questions with English and understood by our panelists. So ito buat terus pergunta English, la precisa traduz. It's a quite, as a Timorese, I'm proud to see that. And so with that, the time and the floor, I give back to the committee. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Guteriano Desneves. And thank you, Professor Benjamin Lees and Professor Yanis Ioannidis and Professor Konstantin Novoselov for sharing your experiences with the next generation. And importantly, thank you all to all of the young people who participated in today's discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be concluding our Science for Development Summit very shortly, whilst we're waiting for the arrival of His Excellency the Vice Prime Minister. Please remain seated. Ita turna fatin de ita hintang presença si Sua Excelência Vice Primeiro Ministro Tamat. Okay. Namo Sua Excelência Presidente da República Ihaneona. Your Excellencies, distinguished Nobel laureates, scientists, international guests, ladies and gentlemen. Over these 2 days, we have heard perspectives spanning science and economic transformation, agriculture and food systems, health and human development, digital security, artificial intelligence, scientific education, and the careers of the next generation. At the center of these discussions has been a common idea that scientific knowledge achieves its greatest value when it is placed in the service of people and development. It is therefore fitting that we conclude the summit with the person whose vision and leadership brought this gathering together. But beforehand, let's watch another dance performance by Wiku Wehali. A round of applause. Ita ba sa lima leba apresentação dança turmai, molo kita tama ba conclusão husi ita Ninhas Cimeira. Thank you very much, Hali. Once again, Your Excellencies, distinguished Nobel laureates, welcome back, scientists and international guests, ladies and gentlemen. And now to conclude the summit with the person whose vision and leadership brought this gathering together, it is my great honor to invite His Excellency, the President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, Dr. José Ramos Horta, to deliver the closing.
Please be seated. Thank you. I would like, I start by, before my formal remarks here, to tell a bit of a difference between the process of the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, how that happened, the process, and in the Academy of Science in Stockholm. Obviously, there are major differences. No possibility of interference, lobby, petitions, and so on. Over the years, of course, I became very familiar with the Nobel Peace Prize process. Of course, the Nobel and resigned from the committee. He was very angry that the Norwegian government intervened forcefully to award that year, 94, to Isaac Rabin, Shimon Peres, and Yasser Arafat. I don't comment on the merit of the three. I think they were all very courageous in doing what they did. But that the Nobel Committee bowed to pressure, maybe understandably, from the Norwegian government. Because it's believed that sometimes that a peace process requires the Peace Prize to push the process ahead. So one day I was in Oslo after the 96 award that went to me and Bishop Bellum. I was sitting on the sidewalk and in Oslo. And the next day, the front page news said, Christiansen, referring to the one who resigned, now he's happy. He forgave the Nobel Committee because his favorite nominee got the prize. Again, I'm not saying who, but that's what I say. But in 95, I went to Norway a few times, and mindful that you cannot lobby, I was always extremely careful. And in going there, I intended only to try to draw attention to Timor and to the Church of Timor and to the role of the bishop. To my surprise, one of the prominent members of the Nobel Committee agreed to talk with me. And he came to my hotel, the cheapest hotel in Oslo. The cheapest in Oslo, it could be like 4-star in Timor or in Bali. And at the time, I was not very well known. And the Nobel Committee member, he came. Today I can say his name, Gunnar Stålsett. For many years, Vice President of the Nobel Committee, Lutheran Bishop of Oslo, and so on. I was so surprised that he would come to my hotel to see a humble Timorese. And I was in full attention, vigilance, telling myself, don't make any mistake. Don't appear to be lobbying for Timor. I was aware that could be disastrous. So, and Gunnar Stålsett at that time, he himself, he was actively mediating the conflict in Guatemala. So I pretended I wanted to learn about the conflict in Guatemala. And I asked him questions about his role in Guatemala. He was totally surprised. And he explained. And then after 15, 20 minutes, he asked me about Timor-Leste. And I was careful, I talked generalities. Then he asked about the church. I talked about the role of the church. And then he asked about Bishop Velu, and I talked about Bishop Velu. And that was in, it was in 95. In 95, the media in Norway, the days before the announcement, they were all talking about the front page. Bishop Velu was, I was not, I was no mention of me. But Bishop Velu, the church, front page in Norwegian media, that he was going to be the winner. On the photo, there was Jimmy Carter and some other people. The Bishop of Chiapas, Mexico, and so on. And, but I was there, I was known already to some of the media, they knew that somehow I'm connected with the church, or with the bishop, whatever. So, and the people who know firsthand who is going to win that morning is the NRK, Norwegian Broadcasting Television. So they called me in a hotel. Can you come 8 a.m. to our studio near the Nobel Committee place? So I went. There are so many journalists, and they will say, please, when after the announcement you talk to us. And I said, listen, how do you know that it's going to be, we are going to win the prize? Yeah, NRK called you, that's because, well, that was 95, October 95. The announcement came, it was not for us. It was for the Pugwash group. You're probably familiar, the Pugwash Conference of Nuclear Scientists, etc. Pugwash is a small town somewhere in Canada where this group, they meet over the years, since the 50s or so, to talk about nuclear war, prevention, and so on. So they got it. And those who won the prize, they were like, each of them like 8 years old. And I didn't, so when I came out, well, A, I didn't have an interview with NRK. B, not a single journalist was there. And I was with one person. And that person was the one that promoted me a lot without telling me. Young people, in the 80s, everybody would know about him. Morten Harket, the lead singer of the rock group called Aha. In the 80s, they sold more records than the Beatles. So he was the one who promoted me in Norway. So I was with him, and I told him, Morten, I'm not coming ever again to Norway. Because when you lose, God, you feel so lonely. And I was alone in the winter in Oslo. It is dark by 4 p.m., it's already dark. And I was alone in my hotel. So in 96, October 96, I was running a course that I created in the University of New South Wales in Sydney, and called Diplomacy and Human Rights. I told my co-director, well, my deputy, Laksiri Fernand from Sri Lanka, I said, Laksiri, I'm not coming tomorrow. That was Thursday. I told him tomorrow, Friday, I'm not coming. I'm going to play tennis the weekend. And of course, Laksiri, you know, since I didn't come, he also decided not to come. The Nobel Committee, they always phone you. You probably know, they phone the winners a few hours in advance to alert you won the prize. Well, they had only my office number at the university. They call, no one answer. Friday, I was home, very miserable apartment in the suburbs of Sydney, very poor. The phone rang. I was babysitting a niece. She was only 3 years old. She'd never leave me alone. We were alone in the house. I moved 1 meter away. She said, Uncle, where are you going? I go to the left, answer, Uncle, where are you going? Follow me everywhere. And the phone rang. I went to the phone. And a Portuguese journalist, Luis Nascimento, from Antena 1, I think, in Lisbon, he said, Mr. Ramos Horta, you won the Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize. President Sampaio, Adelino Gomez, everybody online to comment. Please, can you comment? I said, wait a minute. So, anyways, the day before, a good friend from Washington called me. Jose, what do you think? Who is going to win the Nobel Peace Prize? I told Arnold, I don't care. They can give it to anyone they want, a whole list of people. I don't want to hear about it because, God, I had enough of the previous year of dissatisfaction. But then I nominated, over the years, nominated some people. I nominated Muhammad Yunus. He came to Timor before he won the prize.
Melbourne Summit 2026. On behalf of the President of the Republic, the Government of Timor-Leste, and the Summit Organizing Committee, we extend our sincere appreciation to all our distinguished speakers and moderators for sharing their knowledge and experience with us. We also thank our participating institutions, sponsors, universities, researchers, students, partners, organizers, media, making this summit possible. And to our international guests, thank you for traveling to Timor-Leste and for being part of this important dialogue. Here in Dili will lead to lasting partnerships, new cultural and music program. And now coffee will be served and dinners tonight at the Memoria Viva. Thank you once again. We wish you a pleasant afternoon and evening. Obrigado, Barak. Thank you. Obrigado e adeus. Please enjoy coffee, and also we have exhibition outside. Obrigado, por favor.